The neon lights of the Last Stop bar flickered against the dark metal walls. This place sat at the very edge of the Andromeda galaxy, where laws became suggestions and credits spoke louder than words. Zaknar, a veteran bounty hunter with green-scaled skin and yellow eyes, sat in the corner booth. His 3 decades of hunting had earned him both respect and fear throughout the galaxy. He swirled the blue liquid in his glass, his claw-like fingers tapping impatiently on the sticky table. The contact was late. Zaknar didn't like waiting, but for 5 million credits, he could make an exception. The door slid open with a hiss. A Centaurian diplomat walked in, his 4 legs moving gracefully despite the crowded floor. The silver badge on his chest marked him as a government official, someone who shouldn't be in a place like this. Heads turned briefly before the other patrons returned to their drinks. Nobody asked questions at the last stop. The Centaurian spotted Zaknar and walked over, sliding into the booth across from him. "You are Zaknar?" the Centaurian asked, his voice soft but clear. Zaknar nodded once. "You're late." "My apologies. Security was tighter than expected." The Centaurian reached into his pocket and slid a small data chip across the table. "Everything you need to know is there. The target stole artifacts from our central museum, cultural treasures dating back thousands of years." Zaknar picked up the chip and inserted it into his wrist computer. A holographic display appeared above his arm, showing images of the stolen items, transit records, and finally, details about the target. He scrolled through the information with practiced efficiency until he reached the species classification: human. Zaknar's yellow eyes narrowed. Without a word, he shut down the display and slid the chip back across the table. "Find someone else," he said, already standing up. The Centaurian's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in confusion. "But the bounty is substantial. 5 million credits. That's twice your usual rate." "Not enough," Zaknar replied simply, reaching for his coat. 10 million then." The diplomat was practically shouting now. The bar went quiet. 10 million credits was enough to buy a small moon in some systems. Zaknar paused, looking at the desperate Centaurian. "No hunter will take this job," he said quietly. "Humans are off limits." He walked away without another word, leaving the bewildered diplomat staring at his back. The other customers quickly returned to their conversations, though many spoke in lower voices now. The Centaurian sat alone, stunned by the rejection. The bartender, a 6-armed Vordelian named Grix, moved over to his table. 5 of his arms were busy mixing drinks while the 6th placed a glass in front of the diplomat. "On the house," Grix said. "You look like you need it." "I don't understand," the Centaurian muttered. "It's just one human. How hard could it be?" Grix laughed, a sound like rocks in a grinder. "Don't take it personally. Been tending bar for 200 years, and I'd never seen anyone accept a contract on a human. Not even the desperate ones. But why? There's no galactic law protecting them. They're not even part of the council yet." The bartender's face grew serious, his normally bright orange skin darkening slightly. "Some things don't need to be written down to be understood. Some lessons are learned the hard way." He leaned closer. "Ask yourself this. In a galaxy with millions of species, why would some of the most dangerous hunters alive all agree to avoid just one?" The Centaurian had no answer. He stared into his drink as Grix moved away to serve other customers. Outside the grimy windows of the last stop, stars twinkled in the void. And somewhere among them, a human continued to roam free, carrying ancient treasures that didn't belong to them. No one would be coming to retrieve them. No one dared. Dr. Lyra Winters tapped her stylus against the desk as she reviewed her notes. The office walls were lined with artifacts from dozens of alien cultures, testament to her years as a xenoanthropologist. Sunlight streamed through the large windows of the Earth Diplomatic Corps building, casting long shadows across the floor. For 6 months, Lyra had been researching a puzzling phenomenon. Despite humans being relatively new to interstellar society, Bounty hunters across the galaxy refused to accept contracts targeting them. No formal treaty existed. No official protection had been granted. Yet the taboo remained strong. The door slid open, and Alan Beckett walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. His red beard was neatly trimmed, contrasting with his perpetually messy brown hair. "Any progress?" he asked, placing 1 cup on Lyra's desk. She shook her head. "Nothing in the official records. The Galactic Council archives show no agreement about humans being off-limits." Alan sat in the chair across from her. If it's not written down, it must be part of their oral tradition. But why? Lyra took a sip of coffee. What happened to make an entire profession avoid humans? We're not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the most technologically advanced. Maybe we should ask them directly. Alan pulled out his tablet. "I've compiled a list of retired bounty hunters who might talk to us." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Will they?" "One way to find out," Alan said with a shrug. 3 days later, they sat in a dimly lit room on Proxima Station. The space station orbited Proxima Centauri, the closest star system to Earth, and served as a hub for various species. The air smelled of machine oil and alien spices. Across from them sat Krax, a retired Taurian hunter. His gray skin hung loose on his massive frame, and all 4 of his eyes blinked at different rates. A nasty scar ran from his top left eye down to his jaw. "I don't talk about past jobs," Krax rumbled. "We're not asking about specific contracts," Lyra assured him. "We're curious about why bounty hunters won't accept contracts on humans." Krax shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The chair creaked under his weight. "Look, humans just ain't worth the trouble," he muttered. "But why?" Lyra pressed. "There must be a reason." The old hunter stared at her for a long moment. "How much do you know about your own kind, Dr. Winters?" "I'm not sure what you mean." Krax leaned forward. "Most species evolve in stable environments. They develop specific strengths and weaknesses, predictable patterns." He pointed 1 thick finger at Lyra. "Humans don't make sense. You're too adaptable, too unpredictable." Alan took notes as Krax continued. "First human target I ever heard about was 50 years ago. Team of 5 hunters went after some human criminal. Only 1 came back. Said the human used the environment against them." "How?" Lyra asked. "Trapped them in an old mining tunnel, sealed the exits, and vented the atmosphere." Krax's voice dropped lower. "The survivor only lived because the human carried him out. Said the human told him to spread the word." Krax stood up suddenly. "That's all I know. Except..." He hesitated. "Except what?" Alan prompted. "Ask Jordanelle. She's the only one I know who actually took a human contract. If she'll talk to you." Krax's voice dropped to a whisper. "She's never been the same since." He shuffled toward the door, his massive frame blocking the light momentarily. "How do we find this Jordanelle?" Lyra called after him. Krax turned back, all 4 eyes now focused intently on her. "Last I heard, she was hiding on a moon in the Epsilon Eridani system. But I warn you, Doctor, some questions are better left unanswered." The door slid shut behind him, leaving Lyra and Alan alone with more questions than answers. "Epsilon Eridani," Alan said, already checking travel routes on his tablet. "We can be there in 3 days." Lyra nodded, her mind racing. What could 1 human have done to terrify some of the galaxy's most dangerous hunters? And more importantly, why had no one on Earth been told about it? The small shuttle shook as it entered the atmosphere of Epsilon Eridani's 3rd moon. Lyra gripped her seat while Alan focused on the controls. Rain pelted the viewport, making it hard to see the rocky landscape below. "Are you sure these coordinates are right?" Lyra asked, checking the navigation screen. Alan nodded. "According to our sources, Jordanelle hasn't left this moon in over 15 years. They landed on a flat area surrounded by tall, jagged rocks. The air outside was breathable but thin, and the constant rain made everything slick and cold. They put on their weather gear before stepping outside. Scanners show a structure 2 kilometers north, Alan said, pointing to a ridge in the distance. They walked in silence, struggling against the wind. After an hour, they reached a high metal wall with no visible entrance. Security cameras tracked their movements. "Hello," Lyra called out, her voice nearly lost in the howling wind. "Jordanelle, we just want to talk." No answer came. Alan was about to suggest turning back when a section of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow passage. "I guess that's an invitation," he muttered. Inside, the passage led to a small, spotlessly clean room with metal walls. The door closed behind them with a heavy thud. Water dripped from their coats onto the floor. A voice came from hidden speakers. "Remove your weapons and place them in the container." "We don't have any," Lyra began. "The scanning is complete. 2 projectile weapons detected. Remove them now." Alan sighed and took out a small pistol from his boot. Lyra reluctantly removed one from inside her coat. They placed them in a container that appeared from the wall. Another door opened, leading deeper into the compound. They followed the lit path until they reached a large room filled with screens showing different parts of the moon's surface. In the center sat a figure in a hovering chair. Jordanelle had blue skin, typical of Arcturians, but hers was ashen and gray in places. One arm had been replaced with a crude metal prosthetic. Her 3 remaining eyes studied the humans carefully. "You've come a long way," she said, her voice rough. "We're researchers from Earth," Lyra explained. "We're trying to understand why bounty hunters won't accept contracts on humans." Nell laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. "And you think I'll help you?" "Krax said you took a contract on a human once," Alan said. The room went silent. 2 of Nell's eyes narrowed while the third widened. "Krax talks too much," she finally said. "Yes, I took a contract. Just once. Target was a human male, Ben Harper, smuggler who'd stolen experimental tech." She pressed a button on her chair, and one screen showed a man with dark hair and a scar on his chin. "I was the best hunter in the Eridani sector. Had never failed a contract." Nell's voice grew distant. "I tracked him to an abandoned mining colony. Thought I had him cornered." She touched her prosthetic arm. "I had a team of 7, the best hunters in 3 sectors." "What happened?" Lyra asked softly. "He happened." Nell's eyes fixed on some point far away. "We had superior numbers, weapons, technology. It should have been simple." Her chair moved closer to them. "He used the colony against us. Turned off life support in sections to hurt us where he wanted. Rigged mining explosives. Created areas of vacuum and radiation that our sensors didn't detect. 3 of my team died in the first 10 minutes. 2 more trying to flank him. The 6th was trapped in a processing chamber that slowly filled with acid." Nell's voice had become a whisper. "And me. He caught me last. Disabled my ship. Cut off my arm when I tried to use my backup weapon." She looked directly at Lyra. "Then he let me live. Said someone needed to tell the others. Said humans don't like being hunted." "That's why no one takes contracts on humans now?" Alan asked. "That's just my story," Nell replied. "There are others, all different, all with the same ending." She turned away. "Humans shouldn't be possible. You adapt too quickly. Fight too creatively. Most species follow patterns, even in combat." Her final words chilled them both. "Humans are the only species I've met that actually gets more dangerous when cornered." The Earth Defense Force headquarters stood tall among the other buildings in New Washington. Its gleaming walls reflected the morning sun as Lyra and Alan walked through the main entrance. Security scanners confirmed their identities before allowing them inside. Commander Steve Rogers met them in the lobby. He had short gray hair and a face marked with old scars. His uniform was crisp and decorated with medals from his 30 years of service. "Dr. Winters, Mr. Beckett." He greeted them with a firm handshake. "I understand you've been asking questions about human bounty targets." News travels fast, Alan commented. Steve led them through a series of security checkpoints. Each door required different authorization, and they descended several levels underground. Your research has attracted attention, Steve explained as they entered a small conference room. Not many people know about this particular topic. So there is something official? Lyra asked, taking a seat at the table. Steve sat across from them. There's no official directive telling aliens not to hunt humans. We never asked for special treatment. He placed his hand on a scanner, and a holographic display appeared above the table. But there are incident reports. The display showed dozens of files, each marked with dates going back 50 years. Each of these documents a case where someone tried to capture or kill a human for bounty, Steve continued. The pattern is always the same. The hunters either end up dead or so thoroughly defeated they never work again. He opened one file. The image showed a space station labeled Ta City Trading Post. 3 years ago, a team of hunters cornered a human woman named Patricia Daniels. She was a cook on a cargo ship with no military training. The file contains security footage. They watched as a woman with short blonde hair was chased into a maintenance room by 6 armed aliens. The aliens sealed the door, clearly thinking they had trapped her. What happened next was hard to follow. Patricia moved with surprising speed, using cleaning chemicals, tools, and even parts of her own clothing as weapons. In less than 2 minutes, all 6 hunters were disabled or unconscious. How did she do that? Alan asked, his eyes wide. That's what the hunters want to know, Steve replied. We're not inherently stronger or faster than many species, but humans have something that makes even elite warriors pause. Unpredictability and adaptability taken to extremes. He closed the file and opened another. This one shows a human miner who held off 12 hunters using only mining equipment and his knowledge of asteroid geology. File after file showed similar scenarios. Ordinary humans with no special training overcoming professional hunters through quick thinking, environmental manipulation, and unconventional tactics. Why keep this quiet? Lyra asked. Surely this information would be valuable to humans living off-world. Steve's expression grew serious. 2 reasons. First, we don't want humans becoming overconfident. Not all encounters end well for our side. He opened a file showing human casualties. Second, and more important, we don't want to start an arms race. What do you mean? Ellen asked. Right now, most species see humans as too much trouble to hunt. If we advertise why, they might start developing specific tactics against us. Steve closed the display. Better to let the mystery protect our people. Lyra thought about Jordan Nell's words. What is it about us? Why are we so different? Steve stood and walked to a viewport showing the Earth below. Most species evolved in stable environments. They developed specific adaptations for survival. He turned back to them. Humans faced ice ages, floods, droughts, predators, disease. We couldn't specialize, so we became adaptable. And this adaptability makes us dangerous, Alan concluded. Steve nodded. When a Dracian is threatened, they'll always use their claws. When a Vordelian is cornered, they'll release toxins. Their responses are predictable. He smiled grimly. But no one knows what a human will do when cornered. Sometimes, we don't even know ourselves until it happens. The neon sign of the Spiral Arm Bar flashed in bright green and blue colors. Located on Rigel Prime, the busy trading hub attracted species from across the galaxy. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and the sounds of a dozen different languages. In the center of the crowded room stood Vextor, a tall Proximan with cybernetic enhancements visible across his gray skin. His left eye had been replaced with a glowing red scanner, and his right arm was entirely mechanical. His voice carried over the noise as he addressed the crowd of fellow bounty hunters. Legends are for the weak, he declared, raising a drink with his metal hand. I'm announcing today that I've accepted a contract on Lisa Ortega, a human diplomat accused of espionage. The room went silent. Even the bartender stopped mixing drinks. An old Trandoshan hunter spoke first. "You're either brave or stupid, boy. Probably both." Vextor laughed. "I studied the stories, analyzed the patterns. Humans aren't special. They've just been lucky. No hunter has successfully claimed a bounty on a human in 50 years. Someone else called out. "Then I'll be the first," Vextor replied confidently. "My success rate is perfect. 27 contracts, 27 completions." The news spread quickly through bounty hunter networks. Veterans placed bets not on whether Vextor would succeed, but on how badly he would fail. Some even tried to contact him to warn him off. In his retirement home on Drachia, Zaknar received the news with concern. Though his hunting days were long behind him, he still kept tabs on major contracts. He immediately sent a message to Vextor's ship. "Hunter to hunter, reconsider. There's no shame in walking away." The younger hunter's response came quickly. "Your generation feared shadows. I fear nothing." Zaknar sighed, muttering to himself, "That's precisely the problem." Meanwhile, in his private quarters, Vextor reviewed everything known about humans. His walls were covered with anatomical diagrams, historical battle accounts, and psychological profiles. He had spent months preparing for this moment. The contract offered 20 million credits for the capture of Lisa Ortega, a human diplomat who allegedly stole classified information from the Centaurian government. Her last known location was Jupiter Station, at the edge of human territory. Vextor had assembled a team of 12 elite hunters, each specialized in different combat techniques. There was Morg, a massive Taurian skilled in close combat. The twin Arcadian sisters Vela and Nova, expert snipers. Drex, a Veluvian tech specialist who could hack any system, and 8 others, all best in their fields. They gathered in the planning room of Vextor's ship, the Silent Strike. "Our target is here," Vextor said, displaying a hologram of Jupiter Station. "It's a human outpost with minimal security. Our intelligence suggests Ortega is hiding in the diplomatic quarter." "What about the human factor?" asked Drex, his tentacles nervously tapping on the table. "All the stories are just stories," Vextor interrupted. "We have numbers, technology, and surprise on our side. Our ship has the latest stealth systems. They won't know we're coming." He outlined the plan in detail. They would breach the station through a maintenance airlock, neutralize any security, locate Ortega, and extract before anyone realized what had happened. "We strike in 8 hours, Vextor concluded. "Any questions?" No one spoke, though several exchanged worried glances. Unknown to Vextor, his supposedly secure communications had been monitored. On Jupiter Station, Lisa Ortega received a warning about the incoming threat. A veteran of Earth's diplomatic security service, she knew the danger bounty hunters posed. But rather than contacting station security or fleeing, she made a single call to her brother Eric Ortega, a civilian pilot with a ship docked at the station. "Hey, big brother," she said casually. "Remember those traps we used to set up at the cabin when we were kids? I need your help setting up something similar, but bigger." Jupiter Station hung against the backdrop of the massive gas giant, its ring-shaped structure gleaming in the distant sunlight. Inside, the station was oddly quiet. The normal bustle of 5,000 residents seemed muted, with many areas completely empty. The Silent Strike approached under full stealth, its advanced systems making it invisible to standard sensors. Vextor stood on the bridge, his cybernetic eye scanning the station's exterior. "No unusual activity," he reported to his team. "Heat signatures show reduced personnel. Perhaps they're having a holiday." Drex, the tech specialist, frowned as his tentacles worked across the control panel. "That's convenient. Almost too convenient." "Don't start getting superstitious now," Vextor snapped. "Prepare the boarding party." The 12 hunters moved through the airlock in perfect formation, their weapons ready. They wore the latest stealth armor, making them nearly invisible. The maintenance tunnel they entered was dark and narrow. forcing them to move in single file. Station internal systems accessed. Drex whispered, his portable computer linked to Jupiter Station's network. According to this, our target is in Residential Block C, room 217. Vextor nodded, pleased. Too easy. Security systems. Minimal. Most are offline for maintenance. The hunters moved swiftly through the empty corridors. The lack of resistance made them increasingly confident. They reached Residential Block C without encountering a single person. This doesn't feel right, Moore grumbled, his massive frame barely fitting in the human-sized hallway. Where is everyone? Perhaps they were warned and evacuated, Vela suggested, her sniper rifle scanning ahead. Vextor shook his head. No, if they knew we were coming, they would have increased security, not reduced it. The humans are overconfident, that's all. They reached room 217. Scan showed 2 human heat signatures inside. On my mark, Vextor commanded. 3, 2, 1. The team burst through the door, weapons raised. The room was empty except for 2 maintenance droids giving off heat similar to human bodies. It's a trap, Drex shouted, just as the station's emergency system activated. Red lights flashed along the corridors as airtight doors slammed shut, sealing the hunters in the residential block. A pleasant female voice came over the speakers. Attention. Atmospheric anomaly detected. Adjusting composition for human safety. A fine mist began spraying from hidden vents. The hunters' filters should have protected them, but their suits' sensors started showing strange readings. What is this? Nova asked, her voice suddenly slurred. My system says it's harmless, but I feel wrong. One by one, the hunters began experiencing dizziness and confusion. Their coordinated movements became clumsy. Vextor tried to keep them focused, but his own cybernetic systems were malfunctioning. The lights changed to a pulsing pattern that specifically affected proximate vision, causing intense pain behind Vextor's organic eye. Fall back to extraction point, he ordered, but the words came out garbled. 2 of his team had already collapsed. Over the station's speakers, a new voice spoke, the human male. Hey there, folks. Eric Ortega here. You're currently breathing a compound called ZX479. Harmless to humans, but causes interesting reactions in most other species. Should wear off in about 6 hours. Well, except for Proximans. For you guys, it's more like 12. Sorry about that. A female voice joined in. This is Lisa Ortega. I believe you came looking for me. I should warn you that station security will arrive in about 10 minutes. They're quite upset about you tampering with our systems. Vextor tried to respond, but his translator failed. He could only watch as his perfect plan fell apart. Half his team was unconscious, the others barely functioning. Their ship would automatically depart if they didn't return on schedule, a safety feature now working against them. The final insult came when the speakers played one last message. Oh, and Vextor, we were never on the station. These are recordings. By now, we're halfway to Earth in my brother's cargo ship. Better luck next time. The great hall of the Galactic Council sparkled with light reflecting off its crystal walls. Representatives from over 200 species sat in rising tiers around a central speaking platform. Today, the usually formal atmosphere was charged with an unusual energy as delegates whispered among themselves. 3 months had passed since Vextor's failed attempt to capture Lisa Ortega. The hunter had survived, but his reputation was destroyed. His team had been captured by Jupiter Station security and only released after extensive diplomatic negotiations. The story had spread throughout the galaxy, adding to the growing legend of human unpredictability. Lyra Winters stood at the center of the platform, her formal diplomatic uniform crisp and neat. Behind her, a large display showed various images of Earth and humans throughout history. The Council had invited her to present findings from her research on the human bounty phenomenon. Honored representatives, Lyra began, her voice calm and clear. For centuries, an unwritten rule has existed among bounty hunters. Humans are off limits. Today, I'd like to explain why. She touched a control, and the display changed to show Earth's varied landscapes. Humans evolved on what many of you would consider a death world, she explained. Earth's gravity, atmospheric composition, temperature fluctuations, and indigenous predators created selection pressures that most spacefaring species never experienced. The display showed images of Earth's historical warriors, ancient Greeks in formation, Mongol horsemen, Zulu warriors with shields, modern soldiers with advanced weapons. Our warfighting traditions span thousands of years across countless environments. Lyra continued. From our earliest days, humans had to adapt quickly or die. A Valyrian counselor raised a tentacle to interrupt. Many species have longer military histories. The Dragians have been fighting for 50,000 years. Yes, Alan answered from his position near the edge of the platform, but largely unchanged. Dragians have used the same basic tactics for millennia because they worked. He gestured to the display, which now showed human technological advancement. Humans went from spears to nuclear weapons in under 10,000 years, Alan said. We adapt faster than any known species. Lyra continued. What makes humans truly dangerous isn't our technology or physical strength. It's our creativity under pressure. The display showed footage from various bounty hunter encounters with humans, including Patricia Daniels and her improvised weapons. The most dangerous human isn't the trained soldier you can identify, Lyra explained. It's the civilian with nothing to lose. Our history is filled with ordinary people accomplishing extraordinary feats when cornered. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with various delegates. Consider what happened to Vextor's team. They were defeated not by superior firepower, but by a simple understanding of alien biology and a station atmosphere control system creatively repurposed. The council chamber remained silent as Lyra's words sank in. Many delegates looked uncomfortable. We're not here to request special treatment, Lyra assured them. But we believe understanding breeds respect. Humans don't want to be feared. We want to be known. The head counselor, an ancient Arcadian with silver skin, leaned forward. What do you suggest, Dr. Winters? No official immunity, Lyra answered, but perhaps a cultural warning included in bounty hunter licensing materials across all affiliated systems. She pulled up a final slide on the display. A simple statement that had begun appearing in illegal bounty networks across the galaxy. Humans, not worth the credits. The symposium concluded with the Council's approval. While no official immunity would be granted to humans, all new bounty hunter licenses would now include a special advisory. Attempting to hunt humans may result in severe injury, death, or worse, becoming the hunted. 3 days later, in the last stop bar at the edge of the Andromeda Galaxy, the Centaurian diplomat, who had tried to hire Zaknar months ago, sat nursing a drink. His stolen artifacts were still missing. Grix, the 6-armed bartender, slid over to him. Still looking for a hunter to go after that human. The diplomat shook his head. No, I've learned my lesson. Some prices are too high, no matter the reward. Grix nodded approvingly. Smart. Very smart. Outside the grimy windows, stars twinkled in the endless void. In one small corner of the galaxy, humans continued to explore, trade, and live, unthreatened by the hunters who pursued countless other species. Not because they were special, not because they were protected, simply because they weren't worth the trouble.